Other Pinoy pop groups performed live on stage in April. We begin tonight with the war in Ukraine. Persistent attacks from Russian forces triggered a major blast at the largest nuclear power plant in Europe this morning. The fire at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant began at 2:30 a.m. and was put out after almost 4 hours. The mayor of the closest town said there are casualties, but details cannot be determined yet. The nuclear plant has not sustained any critical damage. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemns the supposedly intentional firing at the facility, while Russia is warning of a potential third world war. We'll tell you more about that later with CNN senior international correspondent Atika Schubert live from Lviv in Ukraine. Now back here at home, from a new record high in total outstanding loans, the country breached 12 trillion pesos as the government borrowed more, mainly for COVID-19 pandemic response. Treasury figures show total debt stock rose to a little over 12 trillion pesos by the end of January, an increase of over 301 billion pesos from December 2021. Compared to January 2021, the debt grew by 16.5%. Out of the 12 trillion, almost 70% or 8.7 trillion pesos were local borrowings and the rest from foreign sources. Yesterday, Finance Chief Sonny Dominguez said 2022 will be critical for the country to outgrow its debt. Dominguez also said better tax collections is crucial to improve the debt to GDP ratio, which is a key indicator of a stable economy. The pace of price increases was steady at 3% in February. That's despite consecutive weeks of fuel price hikes. The Philippine Statistics Authority says the latest inflation figure is slower than the 4.2% in February last year. It also falls within the 2.8 to 3.6% range of the Bangko Sentral for the month. National statistician Dennis Mapa says housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels mainly drove inflation last month. Electricity, cooking gas, and rentals recorded faster increases. Transportation was the second major contributor, mainly because of more expensive fuel and fares for other public transport like tricycles. Following yesterday's announcement that Maynila and Manila water customers will see a reduction of at least 7 pesos to as much as 82 pesos in their bills beginning this month, the question now is, will there be enough water, especially that the dry season is fast approaching? Stanley Gaheta tells us what contingencies the two concessionaires are preparing and how the government is addressing the demand side.
Forecasters say expect lesser rainfall with the onset of summer that may have an impact again on water supply in Metro Manila. In a statement, weather forecaster Benson J. Estareja says a weakening La Nina which comes from the cold front will result in near normal rainfall, including the areas of Angat in Bulacan and La Mesa Dam in Quezon City. The probability of a weather disturbance this month is 0 to 1. Water level in Angat Dam in Bulacan is now 17 meters below the ideal 212 meters.
Posible yung shortage natin kasi medyo March pa lang tayo, medyo mababa na. Posible na ilang buwan pa ito. Although pumasok tayo sa wet season by July, pero hindi pa naman kaagad naapektuhan tong Angat.
Concessionaires and the NWRB also observe a high demand for water for sanitation this time of the pandemic. Concessionaires Manila Water and Maynilad say they are tapping other sources to augment supply.
Tinayo at fully operational na yung ating Cardona Water Treatment Plant dyan sa Rizal, kung saan kumukuha ng tubig ito sa Laguna Lake.
Meron kaming kinukonstruct na 4 na modular treatment plants. So, magpuproduce ng additional supply, kukuha siya ng tubig mula sa mga katabing ilog.
Angat Dam also supplies the irrigation needs of nearby provinces, so regulators are making sure farmlands will get their fair share, mindful of the need to conserve water.
Ngayon po ay yung patuloy naman po yung call natin sa mga ibang ahensya na pamahalaan sa ibang probinsya na mag-practice na responsible use of water. Although specific kasi yung requirement natin dito sa Metro Manila.
Another scheme to induce rain is cloud seeding in water reservoir areas, which the government usually conducts during summer. Stanley Gaheta, CNN Philippines.
Following yesterday's Energy President Duterte adopts nuclear energy as a power source 3 months before he steps down. In an executive order, he tasked the Nuclear Energy Program Interagency Committee to look into the possibility of reviving the Bataan nuclear power plant, a facility built during the Marcos regime but was unused for decades. Now, the plant was supposed to generate 650 megawatts of electricity. The Energy Department thinks now is a good time to revive talks on nuclear energy.
Ang bago, walang problema, di ba? Pero yung BNPP kasi nandyan na yan, so energy security, makakatulong siya. So yes, yan. Safety, nag-recommend ang mga, pwede pa yan, sabi nila. So we have to validate that. Safe ba siya talaga? Cost, pag i-rehabilitate ba natin yan, competitive ba sa cost? O kaya magiging mahal din ang labas. Mas mura ang bago. Kaya rehabilitate mo, di ba?
Undersecretary Ergiza admits the issue may be polarizing with a distant memory of the Chernobyl and Fukushima disasters after accidents involving nuclear reactors there wiped out communities. Now, a group of students is dismayed over the Commission on Higher Education's temporary suspension of scholarship applications for incoming freshmen. The National Union of Students of the Philippines says this will affect the plans of thousands relying on grants, especially in this pandemic. The group also questions the move, with CHED still accepting applications for a tuition increase.
We are conducting consultations with students over the country. We have received reports that many students are not applying now for the next semester due to financial problems.
CHED announced Thursday that it is facing budget issues over its student financial assistance programs. CNN Philippines is reaching out to the Commission to explain its memorandum response. Now, a fourth dose or a second booster shot for senior citizens and persons with underlying illnesses is in the pipeline. Pandemic Task Force Advisor Dr. Ted Herbosa said the government is now reviewing the recommendation of the vaccine experts panel.
Ito ngayon ay pinasa na sa ating technical advisory group at saka all experts at hintayin na lang natin kung maaprobahan ito ng ating IATF para ma-implementat na.
Meanwhile, those aged 17 and below are not yet recommended to get boosted. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere says there is still no evidence to support the pediatric booster. The Health Department reports 853 new COVID-19 cases. This is the country's lowest daily count so far this year. It is also the third straight day the tally fell below 1,000. Active cases are at 50,230, the lowest since January 5. 232 more people lost their lives, while over 1,000 others recovered. Positivity rate is also below 5% for the fourth straight day. Ahead on Newsnight, Ukraine is accusing Russia of committing a terror attack after a fire at its largest nuclear power plant. CNN's Atika Schubert gives us an update on the ground live from Lviv. And is PAGCOR ready to suspend e-sabong operations as dozens of cockfighting enthusiasts remain missing? Stay tuned.
SMC San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of committing a terror attack. He believes Russian troops intentionally fired at Ukraine's largest nuclear power plant. Zelensky called on world leaders to stop Russia before, quote, this becomes a nuclear disaster. Russia said the attack on Ukraine is going according to plan as it threatened a third world war that could be nuclear. Let's bring in CNN senior international correspondent Atika Schubert live from Lviv in Ukraine. Atika, an official saying there may be casualties from the incident at the nuclear plant this morning. What does this fire have to do with the threat of a nuclear war?
Well, there were a lot of concerns. This is Europe's largest nuclear power plant, and fighting had been ongoing around the plant for some time now, and there was deep concern that there could be a rocket attack directly on the plant. We do know a fire broke out there that has since been put out, however. There have been, and now we understand that Russian troops have taken control of the plant. There were some casualties there, mostly Ukrainian military who were trying to defend the plant. So far, it seems that the nuclear power plant is secure. They are still checking for radiation levels there. There were some comparisons to it to the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, of course, that happened in the 80s, but that has not it seems unlikely that this would be the same kind of scenario. It's a different kind of plant, different kind of technology. It's a much safer design, but still deeply concerning that any kind of fighting was happening near it.
Atika, the attack follows a second round of talks that what happened to that? No breakthrough again? And there's a lot of concern about this warning from Russia about a third world war.
Yeah, I mean, nobody expected a big breakthrough in the second round of ceasefire talks. They did, however, agree in principle to some sort of humanitarian corridor from certain besieged cities. So this, in theory, would mean that both sides would stop fighting to allow citizens or residents of a city to get out safely and to allow food, medicine, and other emergency supplies to come in. But we don't have any concrete details of how this would work or when it would be in place and for what cities. As for Russia threatening the possibility of using its nuclear arsenal, they have stepped up what they would call the alert level for its deterrence weapons, which do include nuclear missiles. However, I should point out there are still several more emergency levels above it. So I think it's deeply concerning, but no need for panic at this point. But the very fact that Russian President Vladimir Putin seems to be willing to use nuclear weapons as some sort of a deterrent, I think is very unsettling, to say the least.
Which key cities are now under Russian control?
Well, Kherson is the only city that appears to be fully under Russian control at this point. Although when I say fully under Russian control, keep in mind that the Ukrainian residents there have actually directly been confronting Russian troops and saying that they refuse to be occupied by the Russian military. We're also watching the city of Mariupol, which is next to Kherson. It's slightly further east, but also along that southern corridor of the country. It has been surrounded by Russian troops now for more than 2 days. Water and power have been cut off. They're running very low on food and other supplies, and there's deep concern that they need to get residents out of there and get them to safety as soon as possible. It's interesting, the location of these two cities. They're next to each other along the southern coast of Ukraine, and there appears to be a strategy by the Russian offensive to take this southern coast, possibly even the Ukrainian port city of Odessa. If Russia can control that southern corridor, it would cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea, further isolating the country. So, we're watching the situation very closely to see how far the Russian troops advance there.
CNN senior international correspondent Atika Schubert reporting live from Lviv in Ukraine. Back here at home, President Duterte reiterating the Philippines will remain neutral for now despite the intensifying attacks on Ukraine.
We stay neutral. But reality tells me that in the end, we'll just have to select which side we would be. bahala na yung magpatayan sila doon. Huwag lang magamit ng nuclear device because talo na tayong lahat. Pati tayo damay. I just pray to God that this will not really go out of control.
The country earlier voted in favor of a United Nations resolution condemning the Russian invasion. The government says it is ready to accept refugees from Ukraine. A team from the European Union concludes its monitoring mission to Manila today and says the country should take steps to address concerns recently raised by EU lawmakers. The group sees an urgent need for the government to look into the Duterte administration's drug war, alleged extrajudicial killings, red tagging of human rights defenders, and supposed restrictions in media and free speech. The EU says the country should keep its commitments to continue enjoying the trade privileges of the GSP Plus scheme, which allows for the duty-free entry of thousands of Philippine products to the continent. The current scheme expires end of 2023 with a proposal to extend it until 2034. Petitioners calling on the Commission on Elections to immediately resolve the last pending disqualification case against presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos. The group Budno nga Ilocano filed an urgent motion for the COMELEC's former 2nd Division to settle the petition filed in December. The group said it has been 45 days since it filed the final arguments in the case, but the COMELEC gave Commissioners Socorro Inting and Ray Bulay until April 14 to decide, following the retirement of 3 officials, Chairman Sharif Abbas, as well as Commissioners Rowena Guanzon and Antonio Co.
We understand that there are only 4 commissioners at the moment, but we believe that is no excuse for the COMELEC to delay resolution of the petitions for disqualification, especially so that election time come May is fast approaching.
Inting, who is now COMELEC's acting chairman, said the decision will be out before the elections. Like the other junked petitions against Marcos, the pending disqualification case argues the former senator should not be allowed to run for president after being found guilty of not filing his income tax returns. Now, on the campaign trail, some presidential candidates woo voters in their rivals' bailiwicks and the provinces where they lost in previous elections. Anjo Alimario has that story.
Supporters of Vice President Leni Robredo are out to prove that Cavite is no Marcos country. Governor John Vic Remulla had vowed to deliver 800,000 votes for Robredo's rival, former Senator Bongbong Marcos. But the campaign Caviteños are willing to prove him wrong.
Kasi unang-una mga Caviteño, may sarili kaming pag-iisip. Pangalawa, maraming kabataan sa Cavite na uhaw sa pag-asa, uhaw sa magandang kinabukasan ng Pilipinas. Obviously, apparently, hindi si Marcos ang makakapagbigay nun sapagkat siya ay magnanakaw, sinungaling.
They even made into a TARP this deleted tweet from Remulla showing Robredo leading in his own informal survey on Twitter. The Vice President is a distant second in recent pre-election surveys, but Robredo is not at all discouraged. With 2.3 million votes up for grab here in Cavite, she says she's even more inspired to work hard. Robredo lost to Marcos in Cavite by over 150,000 votes in 2016, but she's hopeful this time around.
Nakikita natin, grabe yung ginagawa ng mga volunteers dito. So wala ito noong 2016. Noong 2016 walang ganito. Kaya very hopeful tayo na magiging mas maganda yung showing natin dito ngayon compared to 2016.
Marcos, meanwhile, is in Robredo's bail week to Bicol region, in Sorsogon in particular. This is the first time Marcos set foot in Bicolandia since the start of the campaign period. His caravan in the province is the shortest he has ever done so far. Fewer people also line the streets compared to his visit in other areas.
Sabi ko, ay hindi natin baluarte yung Sorsogon. Kaya tingnan natin kung anong maging audience.
Just yesterday, Senator Panfilo Lacson was also in Sorsogon. Governor Chis Escudero even drove Lacson and his running mate Tito Soto around the city. The region overwhelmingly voted for Robredo in 2016, but Lacson is convinced he has a fighting chance.
There's no such thing as somebody's country, so to speak. Ano? Even the so-called Solid North, minsan meron ding crack. Ano? Ang Solid North. Wala talaga solid. It's really up to the voters.
Up north, the tandem of Isko Moreno and Willie Ong would voters in Isabela and Cagayan. With them, a senatorial candidate, John Castraciones, who first floated the Isko Moreno-Sara Duterte tandem. But it appears all's well between him and Ong.
Kita ko magaling talaga si Secretary John na marami siya naibigay na lupa.
You know, Doc Willie is a very good man. Napakabuting tao ni Doc Willie. At saka makikita mo sa kanya na hindi siya yung taong talagang nag-i-impose ng kanyang gusto sa tao.
Anjo Alimario, CNN Philippines.
Meanwhile, President Duterte will begin campaigning for the national and local candidates he's supporting on March 25. The PDP Laban faction of Alfonso Cusi says Mr. Duterte will take on a more proactive role as chairman of the ruling party by promoting its more than 6,500 bets. But Mr. Duterte has yet to endorse a presidential candidate. Well, COMELEC ramping up its voter education initiatives 66 days before the Filipino votes. COMELEC officials signed an agreement with poll watchdog Democracy Watch on informing the youth and first-time voters. Over the next 2 months, the group will tap universities for information campaigns.
For Democracy Watch, like I said earlier, I'll reiterate that we aren't taking sides in our advocacy. Instead, what we do is we want to push the issues. We want to highlight facts and documents and videos that show the facts of what actually happened in the history of the Philippines. So, isa na nga po dun is yung disinformation na nakikita po natin na very rampant ngayon kung election season, not only during elections, even before. And that's why po we've incorporated this issue into the voter education program.
Meanwhile, COMELEC addressed criticism from several camps, including the Office of the Solicitor General, on its partnership with Rappler for voter education efforts. The poll body says the online news company will not have access to restricted information.
With respect to Rappler, we received an advisory from the Solicitor General, and we are still studying our options because, I would like to emphasize that COMELEC is a constitutional body and an independent.
A controversial personality surfaces at a Senate hearing into abductions linked to e-sabong, or remote betting on live cockfighting matches. As the search for missing cockfight enthusiasts continues, is PAGCOR ready to suspend e-sabong operations? Amor Santos reports.
Gaming tycoon Atong Ang draws the victim card on Friday as he faced the Senate investigation on the disappearances of more than 30 cockfight enthusiasts. Several of them were last seen in 3 arenas operated by Ang's e-sabong company, Lucky 8 StarQuest. Ang claims there's a conspiracy against him, but he did not go into detail. Instead, he requested an executive session with senators.
Ang Lucky 8, parang ginano nyo na guilty eh. Hindi naman trial by publicity, papatunayan ko sa inyo na may conspiracy rito. Okay? Wala kaming kinalaman dyan.
Kaya nakasentro dito sa kumpanya ninyo yung investigasyon, hindi nakasentro kay Bong Pineda, hindi nakasentro doon sa ibang mga licensee because yung tatlong mga sabungan kung saan last known location ng mga missing victims, doon sila nalulukit bago sila nawawala.
During the public hearing, Ang disclosed the staggering amount of money his company makes. Gross bets ranged from 1 to 2 billion pesos per day for a total of 30 to 60 billion pesos monthly. Of this amount, Lucky 8 gets a 5% commission, or at least 3 billion pesos. About half of it is given to the agents, while the remaining 1.5 billion pesos go to company revenue and operating fund. To date, e-sabong brings in a total of 640 million pesos to the government monthly, according to PAGCOR. It's a valuable reason why the state regulator is hesitant to suspend e-sabong operations, despite the Senate request for a timeout amid the ongoing probe. PAGCOR Chair Andrea Domingo says other operators also appealed for a quote-unquote fair and just treatment, saying they committed no violations. Domingo says PAGCOR needs time to study the consequences but will hit the brakes if ordered by President Duterte.
Hindi po namin ayaw suspendin. Kailangan lang po talaga namin ng konting proteksyon mula kay Presidente. Kasi nga po, hindi namin kayang sagutin yung gagawin ng COA at yung mga kasong pwedeng ikaso sa amin. Kasi po malaking kawalan nga ng pera, loss of revenue, may mga auditing rules po dyan at may mga contractual obligations kami. Pag po sinabi sa amin ni Presidente, sige, at least po meron kami proteksyon. Ang sabi, culture yan ng sabong eh. Kahit daw dun sa... Hindi ko po alam ang sabong eh. Kahit daw doon sa mga lokal na sabong, pag may nanghuling ng bidadaya, talaga daw pong pinaparusahan.
Months into the search, families of those missing continue to hope against hope, including the mother of a 14-year-old boy who disappeared from a cockpit in Laguna.
Nag-birthday po siya noong January 5. Dumating na lang po ako, sabi ng mga kapatid na sinama daw po sa sabungan na yun.
Kinikita natin sa langit pag hindi natin makita dito. Ha?
Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
Still ahead, it is the Lakers versus the Warriors. Yet again, which team topped the list for most NBA jerseys sold in the Philippines? And we give you details on the much-awaited P-Pop convention with the likes of SB19 and BGYO set to perform. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. In basketball, which NBA player won Filipinos' hearts in the first half of the season? Now, if we were to base that on jersey sales, Stephen Curry, the Golden State Warriors, emerges as the most popular. The two-time league MVP topped the NBA Store Philippines list based on what was sold from October 20 last year to January 31st. Ranking second is the Los Angeles Lakers' LeBron James. But Pinoy Laker fans are still going strong, with the squad topping the list of team merchandise sales locally. The Warriors came second, followed by the Nets, the Mavericks, and then the Bucks. And this Sunday, the triathlon capital of the country will welcome Asia's first full-length Ironman race in 2 years. 912 triathletes, including 868 local participants, will compete in the Subic Bay town. The race will feature a grueling 3.8-kilometer swim, 180-kilometer bike, and a 42-kilometer run. Also taking place is the 70.3 half-distance race. Participants must present a negative RT-PCR test 48 hours upon entry to Subic Bay. The top 45 finishers in each group will get a chance to qualify for the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii, and St. George, Utah. Now, in music, ticket prices and the seat plan for one of the biggest nights in Filipino pop are out. On your screens are the details for this year's P-Pop convention to be held in the Smart Araneta Coliseum on April 9 and 10. Tickets range from 1,000 pesos to 5,500. Fans who can't make it physically may also avail of passes for live streaming. Some artists taking the stage are Billboard chart toppers SB19, fellow boy group BGYO, and girl groups BD and MNL 48. You can grab your tickets by Sunday, March 6. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by